I deliver packages in a mountain town. There are strange rules to follow. The first delivery, they told me the job was easy. Deliver packages, follow a route, and be polite to the locals. But when I arrived in the quiet, snow-smothered town nestled high in the mountains, I was handed a rules sheet instead of a welcome. Rules like don't look in the rearview mirror after 9 p.m. and never deliver to cabin 6 unless the red light is on. I thought it was a joke until my first delivery. That's when I realized these rules were the only thing keeping me alive. The job listing was vague, but the pay was too good to ignore. I was broke, fresh out of a warehouse gig, and my landlord had already taped a second eviction notice to my apartment door. The ad said, "Courier needed, small mountain town, room and board provided, high pay, discretion required." That last part should have tipped me off. 2 days later, I was driving my beat-up Ford Focus up winding roads into the fog-wrapped mountains. The higher I got, the quieter the world became. No cell signal, no radio stations, just the soft hum of my engine and the distant call of birds I'd never heard before. The town wasn't on any map. I had to follow a printed set of directions emailed to me after I accepted the job. No GPS, no coordinates, just a sequence of turns that ended at a rickety wooden sign reading Gray Pines, hanging lopsided between 2 trees. It looked like something out of a postcard. Charming cabins, smoke drifting from chimneys, and a thick carpet of snow covering everything. But the stillness, it wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. The logistics office was in a trailer near the town center. An older man with sun-dried skin and cloudy eyes met me at the door. He introduced himself as Eli, the dispatcher. "You're the new guy," he grunted. "Didn't expect you to show." I tried to joke. "What? People don't like driving up here." He didn't smile. Instead, he handed me a manila envelope labeled "Rules," read before first delivery. Inside was a crumpled sheet of paper, yellowed with age and covered in typewritten instructions. Gray Pines Delivery Guidelines. Rule number 1, do not deliver past 11 p.m. Rule number 2, do not look in your rearview mirror after 9 p.m. Rule number 3, if you see someone standing motionless by the side of the road, keep driving. Rule number 4, cabin 6 only accepts packages when the red porch light is on. Rule number 5, never speak to the children who live by the creek. Rule number 6, if you hear knocking from the back of the van, do not stop. Rule number 7, return all undeliverable packages to the office before sunrise. Do not keep them. I stared at the list, half expecting Eli to laugh. But he didn't. "Stick to the rules, and you'll be fine," he said, handing me a keyring. "Your van's out back. You start tonight." Before I could protest or ask for clarification, he slammed the trailer door shut behind me. The van was a white delivery vehicle, unmarked, humming softly in the cold dusk. The cargo bay was already loaded with brown boxes, each labeled with hand-scrawled addresses. The dashboard clock blinked 5:12 p.m. in red. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the route. The town's roads twisted like serpents, coiling through pine forests and sharp ridges. Each house sat far apart from the others, like the neighbors didn't want to be too close. My first few deliveries were uneventful. Elderly residents answered the door with wary expressions, snatched their packages without a word, and shut the door fast behind them. At 8:30 p.m., I reached the edge of town and pulled up to a rundown cabin with the number 6 etched into the mailbox. I remembered the rule: only deliver when the red porch light is on. Tonight, it glowed like blood in the snow. I hesitated, then grabbed the box marked Cabin 6, urgent, and walked toward the steps. The porch creaked under my boots. I knocked once, twice. The door opened on its own. The interior was pitch black. "Hello," I called. "Package for Cabin 6. Silence. I set the box down just inside the door and backed away slowly. As I turned to go, I heard something. A voice, barely a whisper, from the darkness. "Thank you." I didn't stick around to reply. By 9 p.m., I was halfway through the route. The snow had begun falling harder, blotting out the moonlight. My wipers squealed across the windshield. The road narrowed, and fog crept in around the van. Then I saw her. A girl, maybe 9 or 10, standing by the side of the road in a pale blue dress. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her eyes were too wide, unblinking. I remembered the rule. If you see someone standing motionless by the side of the road, keep driving. But my foot hovered over the brake. She raised a hand and pointed directly at me. "Sir," she said, though her lips never moved. The word echoed in my head. "Please help." Something primal inside me screamed drive. I floored the gas, tires spitting snow. In the rearview mirror, I saw her form dissolve into mist. At 9:46 p.m., something started knocking. From inside the van, I gripped the wheel tighter and remembered the rule. Do not stop. The knocking continued, measured, deliberate, like knuckles tapping rhythmically on wood. It came from the cargo bay. Then it moved. It shifted from the left side to the right, then behind my seat. I turned up the heat to drown the sound, but the knocking only grew louder. I didn't stop. At 10:30 p.m., I reached a steep gravel driveway leading to a lone house near the woods. The address matched the last package in the back. As I climbed out with the box, the wind picked up. Trees groaned. Something moved in the brush, tall, slinking between the trunks. I hurried to the door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Then, from behind the trees, I heard someone mimic the sound. 3 knocks, identical in rhythm. I turned fast, heart thudding. Nothing there. Just trees and snow and darkness. I placed the box on the porch and jogged back to the van. When I returned to the logistics office just after 11 p.m., Eli was waiting on the steps, smoking a cigarette. Cutting it close, he said, flicking ash into the snow, "You deliver everything." I nodded, hands still shaking. "You see anything weird?" I hesitated. I heard something knocking, and there was a girl. By the road. Eli looked past me, toward the woods. "You follow the rules." I didn't stop. I didn't deliver to cabin 6 until the light was on. I didn't talk to the girl. He nodded. "Good. You'll last longer than the last guy." I wanted to ask more. What happened to the last guy? What's in the packages? What's in the woods? But I was too tired. Eli handed me a heavy brass key. "Your cabin's the one behind the church. You'll be safe there. Lock up and don't answer the door at night, even if someone knocks." I found the cabin just as snow began falling in earnest. It was cozy inside. Wood paneling, a fireplace, a small bed with thick wool blankets. I locked the door, triple-checked the windows, and sat on the edge of the bed with the rules sheet in my hand. They didn't feel like guidelines anymore. They felt like survival instructions. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside like something alive, pressing cold fingers against the windows. And just after midnight, someone knocked on the door. 3 times. Slow. Measured. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knocking stopped, but a whisper leaked through the crack in the door. "You forgot one." The forgotten package. The whisper faded like smoke, but the words lingered in the cold air. "You forgot one." I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, heart thudding so hard it drowned out the wind. I stared at the door, expecting it to rattle on its hinges. But nothing followed. No second knock. No movement. Just silence. "You forgot one." I replayed the night's route in my head. I had delivered every box, hadn't I? I grabbed the keys and coat, threw on my boots, and yanked open the cabin door. Snow had swallowed the porch. My breath plumed into the darkness. There were no footprints in the snow, No signs that anyone had ever been there. But something had knocked. Something had whispered. My van was parked where I left it, just outside the churchyard. I stomped through the snow, unlocked the back doors, and opened them. There was a single box, small, wrapped in brown paper. No label, just a hand-scrawled note on top that read, "To be delivered, 19 Whisper Lane." I had never seen that address on the delivery list. Eli wasn't in the office. His trailer was dark, and the only light in town came from a street lamp flickering above the chapel. I considered leaving the box on his doorstep, but something about it felt wrong. Too deliberate, too quiet. Instead, I brought it back inside the cabin, set it on the table, and stared at it while the wind screamed through the trees. The box was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been. The corners of the paper were sharp, almost metallic. I had the urge to open it, just to see what was inside, but I didn't. Instead, I reached for the rule sheet again, searching for anything I might have missed. No mention of Whisper Lane, no instructions for missed deliveries, just a final line I hadn't noticed before. Mistakes bring them closer. I slept with the lights on and the box still sitting on the table, untouched. The knocking didn't return, but the whisper echoed in my dreams. I woke the next morning to a pale, washed-out sunrise and frost crawling up the inside of the windows. There was a knock, gentler this time. Not on the door, on the glass. I jolted upright and turned toward the window by the table. Fingerprints, small ones, child-sized, etched in the frost from the outside. I stood, heart racing, and looked out the window. No one was there. I snatched the box off the table, stuffed it into a canvas bag, and headed straight for Eli's trailer. This time, he answered. "You left me a fake address." I snapped. "What the hell is Whisper Lane?" Eli scratched his beard. "You saw that one, huh?" "Yeah. And someone came to my cabin last night." He looked at me, tired, heavy-eyed. "That box wasn't meant for you to deliver. Then why is it still in the van?" He walked past me, gesturing for me to follow him around back. We passed the trailer and a small shed with rusted hinges. Inside, it was stacked with dozens of identical boxes, all unlabeled, all undelivered. "They come back sometimes," Eli said, picking one up. "Doesn't matter how many times you drop them off. They find their way home." I felt sick. What's inside? No one opens them. Not if they want to stay alive. He dropped the box onto a shelf and turned to me. "You bring it back here." I nodded. "You're lucky." Then he handed me another clipboard and a new delivery list. "You start again tonight. Watch the time." That day, I wandered the town during daylight, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain what was going on. Most of the townsfolk avoided me. They moved in slow, robotic routines, tending to their yards, fetching groceries, never lingering long. There were no schools, no gas stations, no kids playing in the streets. At the general store, the woman behind the counter stared at me a beat too long. "You're the new courier," she said, more a statement than a question. "Yeah, you've had others." Her lips thinned. None that lasted long. "What happened to them?" She didn't answer, just rang out my water bottle and said, "If you hear bells, cover your ears." That night's route began at 6 p.m. sharp. Eli's instructions were clear. Stay on route, obey the rules, do not deviate. The first few deliveries were simple. Same houses, same strange residents. No one spoke, no one smiled. Then came the new stops, places I hadn't seen before. The road forked near the edge of a gorge, and I followed the turn marked High Ridge Pass. Snow fell heavier now, and the trees leaned in over the road like watchers. My next delivery was to a stone house covered in moss, half hidden by a rusted iron gate. I pulled up and checked the porch light. It blinked red 3 times, then went out. I remembered something Eli said. Red light means it's safe to approach. Flashing means be quick. I grabbed the box and jogged to the door. Just as I set it down, I heard footsteps inside, heavy, uneven, then scratching on the other side of the wood. I bolted. Further down the pass, I made a delivery to a house on stilts near a frozen lake. No lights, no signs of life, but the address matched. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard singing. A child's voice. Soft, mournful, off-key. I dropped the package and backed away slowly. The singing stopped. Then a voice, flat and dry, spoke from inside. Tell them I don't want any more. I didn't wait to see who them was. By 9 p.m., I was approaching the final delivery of the night, Cabin 3, a place I'd skipped yesterday due to a collapsed road. Tonight, the path had been cleared, almost too perfectly. As I neared, my headlights caught movement near the tree line. A figure, still, watching. I remembered the rule. Do not look in the rearview mirror after 9 p.m. I gripped the wheel and drove forward without turning my head. I could feel it behind me. Close. Breathing. My eyes itched with the urge to glance back. But I focused on the road, on the soft glow of Cabin 3's windows ahead. I parked, stepped out with a box, and moved fast. On the porch, an elderly man opened the door before I even knocked. You brought it, he said. I just delivered the packages, I replied. He reached out with trembling hands. It's not for me. Then he pointed behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just the road. But when I looked down, the box in my hand was already gone. He nodded. She has it now. I returned to the van and sat in silence for a moment, trying to slow my breathing. The dashboard clock read 10:37 p.m. One more delivery. That was it. The address was Creekman Hollow. The name alone made my skin crawl. The route wound along the banks of a narrow, black stream. My headlights flickered. The air smelled wrong, like wet copper and mold. As I reached the drop-off point, I saw them. Children. At least 6 of them, standing barefoot in the snow near the creek. Pale skin, hair matted with ice, clothes from another century. One of them raised a hand and waved slowly. I clenched the wheel. Never speak to the children who live by the creek. They stepped forward. One girl, no older than 8, had eyes like polished coal. She pointed to the back of my van. You have something for us. I didn't reply. She tilted her head. You can't keep it. Without a word, I tossed the package out the window and reversed hard, nearly skidding into a tree. I didn't look back. Not in the mirror, not over my shoulder. Not even when I heard them laughing. When I returned to the trailer at 11:05 p.m., Eli was waiting. You're late, he said. There was a detour. His eyes narrowed. You spoke to them, didn't you? No, I lied. He studied me a moment longer, then nodded. We'll see if they follow you tonight. I blinked. What? But he turned and shut the trailer door without another word. Back at the cabin, I checked every window, every lock. The forest outside felt closer somehow. Heavier, the kind of dark that bends light. I was pouring myself a glass of water when I heard it. Not a knock, a scraping, like fingernails along the base of the cabin. Then, footsteps on the roof. Something whispered above me. We didn't get our box. The ones who wait beneath. The footsteps on the roof stopped. Not faded. Stopped, like a puppet string had been severed. I held my breath, frozen in place beside the kitchen sink. My cabin was dead silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the wind clawing at the windows. I dared a glance upward, half expecting the ceiling to collapse. But nothing happened. Then, something scratched against the far wall. Delicate, repeating, like fingernails. I crept to the front door, flipping off the lights as I moved. Darkness washed the cabin, and in its shadowed silence, I could hear it clearly. The scraping sound, slow, deliberate, circling the cabin's perimeter. My flashlight was in the utility drawer. I grabbed it and clicked it on, casting a narrow beam. I moved toward the sound, step by cautious step, and pressed my ear to the door. Silence. I opened the door. The porch was empty. Wind howled between the trees. The snow was still falling, yet there were no tracks, just the flattened imprint of someone, or something, having stood there. Then I saw it. A new package. Small, unmarked, just like the others. Only this one had something written on it in red ink, dripping like fresh blood. Return to sender. I called Eli. He didn't answer. I waited until the first sliver of dawn cracked across the pines before I dared step outside again. The box hadn't moved. I picked it up with gloved hands and dropped it into the back of the van, determined to take it straight to Eli. His trailer was dark again. The porch light was shattered, and the door was wide open. Inside, drawers were pulled out and strewn across the floor. Boxes, those brown, unlabeled ones, were torn open. The contents spilled across the linoleum. I stepped closer and saw what was inside. Teeth, dozens of them. Human, baby teeth, molars, canines, all pristine, like they had just been pulled. And something else, scraps of paper with names. Dozens of names, all written in the same red ink. At the bottom of the list was a new one, my name. I backed away from the table. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. A low creak came from the hallway. I turned, flashlight raised. At the end of the hall, Eli stood in the shadows, shirt torn, one eye swollen shut. You shouldn't have answered them, he rasped. I didn't, I said, voice trembling. I followed every rule. He stepped forward into the light, no longer entirely human. His skin had stretched taut, face elongated. His limbs moved in unnatural angles, like a marionette jerked by invisible strings. The rules change, he whispered, when they want them to. I fled, drove until the mountain air thinned and the roads blurred into white nothing. But no matter which route I took, I always circled back to the same place. The chapel on the hill, the old post office, my cabin. Like the town itself was looping me. I pulled over and sat with my head against the wheel. The return to sender package sat in the passenger seat, humming slightly. Yes, humming, like a faint vibration just beneath the wrapping. I didn't want to know what was inside, but the mountain wanted me to know. The general store was still open, though the shelves looked emptier than before. I found the woman behind the counter in the back room, stringing up garlic. She didn't look surprised to see me. They came for Eli last night, I said. She nodded. It was his turn. His turn. She sighed and lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. This place isn't like other towns. It feeds on routine, rules, the deliveries, their offerings. Offerings to what? She inhaled slowly, then exhaled a cloud of smoke that curled like fingers. To the ones beneath, the old things buried under the mountain. They sleep as long as we play along. Every night, the packages go out. Every night, the town stays safe. I pulled the box from my bag and dropped it on the counter. What about this one? Her expression changed. She didn't touch it. She just stared. They sent it back, she said. That's bad. Why? What happens now? She looked at me, eyes flat. You're marked. That night, I didn't get a delivery list. The trailer was locked. No lights. No people. It was like the entire town had sealed itself shut. Only my cabin glowed in the distance. I stepped inside and found another package waiting for me on the table where I had once left the first. Only this one had my name written on it. Shaking, I peeled back the paper. Inside was a photograph. An old one, sepia-toned, folded at the edges. It showed a boy standing in the snow, wide-eyed and alone. He looked maybe 10. Familiar. Then I realized it was me. I flipped the photo over. In that same red ink. Second chance. Make the delivery. There was no address. No instructions. Just a photo. Just me. I stayed up all night, afraid to close my eyes. The lights flickered every few minutes. Once, I heard something crawl across the roof again. At 3:33 a.m., a knock came, not on the door, but on the floorboards beneath me. 3 slow knocks, then silence. I dragged the rug aside and stared at the old trapdoor in the floor I had never noticed before. The wood looked older than the rest of the cabin. There was a rusty iron ring embedded in the middle, almost fused with the planks. My hand hesitated above it. Then a voice whispered from the darkness below, "You forgot us." I didn't open it. I ran, got in the van, and drove to the edge of the gorge where the old road collapsed last year. Parked under the stars and waited. That's where they found me. Not the townsfolk. Them. They emerged from the tree line without sound. Tall, skeletal things with twisting limbs and faces that bled shadow. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. They didn't touch me. Just opened the van door. One reached in with 2 long fingers and took the return to sender box. Then they vanished. Just like that. The next morning, I drove back into town. Everything was normal again. People in the streets. Lights on. Music playing from the general store's radio. Eli's trailer door was fixed. The chapel bells were ringing. And taped to my cabin's door, a new delivery list. At the top, scrawled in messy handwriting. "Good job. Don't forget again." I thought it was over. Thought I had survived. But the rules had changed. Again. 2 weeks later, I made a delivery to a new house at the far end of the lake. No lights. No address marker. What was on the list? As I placed the package on the steps, a woman opened the door. She was smiling. Too wide. "Do you know what you're delivering?" she asked. I shook my head. She reached down and picked up the box, then held it close like it was a child. "They're pieces," she said softly, "of what once was, and what will be again." I tried quitting the job, packed my bags, left the van by the chapel, started walking, made it 15 miles down the mountain road before I reached the next town. I thought I'd escaped, until I saw a delivery box waiting at the motel I checked into. Same brown paper, same red ink. Only this time, the note read, "You can never leave." That night, I opened the box. I needed to know. Inside was a mirror. Old. Cracked. When I looked in, I didn't see myself. I saw the forest. A dozen copies of me, lost and wandering through fog. And standing behind them, it. Not a creature. Not a person. A shape. Tall. Thin. Mouthless. Holding a clipboard. Back in a mountain town, I delivered packages every night. Even when it rains ash. Even when the packages weep. Even when the doors open on homes that haven't been lived in for decades. Because if I don't deliver them, they come for me. Again, and again, and again. That was last night. Now, I found something new in the van. Not a box. A key. Attached to it, a note. 19, Whisper Lane. Deliver in person. 19, Whisper Lane. The key was cold in my palm. Not just in the way metal usually is. It was wrong. Like it had just been pulled from the bottom of a frozen lake. Attached to it was a curled slip of yellow paper, with only 4 words written in that now familiar crimson ink. 19, Whisper Lane. In person. No return address. No package. Just the key. And the sick feeling in my stomach that this wasn't a delivery at all. It was a summons. I asked around town that morning, but no one seemed to know where Whisper Lane was. The chapel's caretaker simply looked away when I mentioned it. A man at the post office gave a nervous cough and mumbled something about streets that don't stay on maps. But the girl at the general store, the one who always played static-filled music on that busted radio, finally leaned in and whispered, "Whisper Lane finds you." I didn't ask for clarification. Somehow, I already understood. That night, the van started on its own. I've been inside my cabin, watching snow drift past the windows when I heard the engine turn over. I ran out with my coat half zipped, breath fogging in the air. The headlights were on, low beams. The door was wide open. The keys sat on a passenger seat like an invitation. Against my better judgment, I climbed in. The GPS was off, the radio dead, but the van moved anyway. It took me through the woods, down roads I didn't recognize. Narrow trails choked with roots and rocks, tunnels too tight for the vehicle to logically pass through. It did. Time lost meaning. Trees blurred. My breath caught when we crested a hill, and I saw it in the valley below. A single house. Old. Victorian. Wrapped in dead vines. Smoke curling from the chimney like a black tongue. A rusted street sign leaned into the wind. Whisper Lane. The van stopped exactly 10 feet from the porch. The key in my hand burned now. I stepped out and walked the path in crunching silence. The air smelled like mildew and rot and something far older. The door opened before I knocked. Inside was dim. Not dark, not light. Just gray, like the whole house existed between moments of time. No one greeted me, but the walls breathed. I swear to God, they breathed. Wallpaper pulsed. Floorboards twitched under my feet like muscle. And then I saw them. Portraits. Dozens of them. Hanging in the hallway. Each more decayed than the last. Every frame contained a face. Most were strangers. But some I recognized. Eli, the chapel caretaker. The woman from the store. And me. My own eyes stared back. Mouth slightly open, as though I'd been caught mid-scream. I tried to leave. The door was gone. Not locked. Not jammed. Just gone. Like it had never been there. The hallway stretched before me now, longer than it had seemed. I took a step, then another. Something creaked behind me. I didn't turn. Turning in a place like this felt like inviting it closer. Then I heard the voice. Small, childlike, coming from upstairs. Are you here to deliver me? I froze. I've been waiting. The stairs loomed at the end of the hall, crooked and broken in places. Against all logic, I began to climb. At the top was a narrow corridor lined with doors, each one slightly open, each one whispering. I passed one room and heard the rustling of dry leaves. Another, and it sounded like bones being cracked open. One room had what sounded like breathing, several sets, all in unison. The last door was shut. Unlike the others, it had a nameplate. It read, Cinder. The key in my hand glowed faintly. I inserted it into the lock and turned. The room beyond was a nursery. Rotting toys littered the floor. A mobile spun above a blackened crib, creaking on rusted chains. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, revealing layers underneath, each with strange symbols, like runes made of claws and teeth. The crib was empty, at first. Then it moved. Something inside shifted. A tiny hand reached up and gripped the edge. And then it spoke. In my voice. Do you remember what you gave up? I stumbled back. My mind screamed that this wasn't real, but every part of me knew it was. This place was showing me something. Something I didn't want to face. You delivered me here, it whispered. A long time ago. And now I'm delivering you. The floor opened beneath me. Not collapsed. Opened like a throat swallowing its final breath. I fell into pitch blackness, spinning through memories that weren't entirely mine. I saw packages in the van, but instead of boxes, they were people. Each one weeping, each one screaming. I saw myself, years ago, maybe lifetimes, wearing a different uniform, delivering more than just mail, delivering souls. Then silence. I landed in a chamber of stone and bone. Hundreds of keys hung from the ceiling like icicles. And in the center was a chair. Someone sat there. They wore a postman's uniform. Their face was wrapped in bandages. and they were holding something. A clipboard. You finally arrived. The figure rasped. I tried to speak. Couldn't. They stood and extended the clipboard to me. The paper on it was blank until ink began to bleed across the page like veins. Promotion approved. You are now permanent courier of Whisper Lane. I dropped it. I didn't ask for this. I managed to choke out. They nodded slowly. None of us did. But you delivered. That was your mistake. Once you serve, you belong. The floor shifted again. I found myself back in the van. Morning light spilled through the windshield. Was it morning? Or just another illusion? I was parked at the old chapel again. The clipboard was in my lap. This time, it had a full list. New addresses. New names. At the top, Whisper Lane. At the bottom, final stop, sender. I went to the general store. It was open again. The radio played that same static song. I asked the girl behind the counter if she remembered me. She said nothing, just stared, then handed me a brown paper box. No label, but it was warm and ticking. That night, I delivered packages to places that hadn't existed before. A shed in the middle of a lake. A cabin that burned as I walked away. A house with no windows and 50 locked doors. The last address led me back to the edge of the forest, where the trees bent away from a single dirt path. At the end of that path, my own cabin. A package was waiting on the steps, larger than the rest, marked with one word. Myself. I opened it. Inside was a mirror again, but this one reflected something else. I wasn't alone. Behind me stood dozens of versions of myself. Courier uniforms from different decades, all with hollow eyes, all waiting. One stepped forward and whispered, "There's no end, only the next delivery." Now I wake up each night before the sun rises. The van starts on its own. The packages appear. The clipboard updates. Whisper Lane is always the final stop. And sometimes, just sometimes, I wonder what would happen if I didn't deliver one. If I skipped a name. If I ran. But then I remember what Eli became. What I used to be. And I drive. Because somewhere, something waits beneath this town. And it's hungry. The final delivery. You ever wonder what's really in the packages you never ordered? Or why some streets only exist when you're alone at night? I used to think I was just a delivery guy in a quiet mountain town. Now, I know the truth. I'm the last stop before something far darker. And tonight, I made my final delivery. I try not to look at the new list, but it was there, staring up from the clipboard like a second spine in my lap. Only one address this time. Whisper Lane, final stop, and next to it, in bolder ink than ever before, deliver yourself. I wanted to scream, to rip the keys out of the ignition, to burn the van, to flee into the woods and never come back. But I didn't, because I already knew I couldn't leave. Not really. I drove in silence. The road to Whisper Lane no longer twisted through the forest. It cut under it. Trees warped and curved inward like ribs. The sky above went from gray to bruised purple, then pitch black. And still I drove. Time had no meaning. It could have been minutes, or hours, or years. I only stopped when the van rolled to a halt on its own. Before me stood a mirror of the first house I'd visited on Whisper Lane. Same Victorian shape, same dead vines crawling up its bones. But this one was different. It pulsed. The whole structure throbbed, like a living heart. The front door creaked open before I even stepped out. I looked down. There was no package this time, just a clipboard. I left it behind. I didn't need a signature for this one. The air inside was thick, almost wet. The walls bled softly from the edges, like condensation in reverse. Everything shimmered with an unnatural sheen, as if the house were made of memory and grief, not wood and stone. The portraits were back, dozens of them, hundreds, faces frozen in agony, in fear, in realization. And mine, there, over the mantel, had changed. My mouth wasn't open in a scream anymore. It was smiling. I climbed the stairs, knowing what waited. The hallway stretched as if resisting me, but I kept walking. The last door on the right had the same nameplate, Sender. I opened it. Inside was the nursery again, but had grown. The crib was massive now, almost like a throne. The toys on the floor were no longer plastic. They were real. Shriveled hands, baby teeth in a cracked music box, a mobile made of finger bones. And standing beside the crib was me. But it wasn't. It wore my face, sure, my uniform, but the thing behind the eyes wasn't human anymore. It was the collector. Welcome home, it said in a voice layered with echoes. What is this? I asked, finally letting the words out like bile. What do you want from me? It walked closer. You've already given it. Every delivery, every package, every address. They weren't random. The thing pointed at the wall behind me. There, carved in flesh and ink, was a map, a diagram of the town. Red pins jabbed into houses, businesses, cabins deep in the woods, and black lines connected them all to the center. Whisper Lane. You weren't delivering to people, it whispered. You were delivering them to us. My knees buckled. No, I didn't know. You did. Deep down. Why do you think you stayed? Why didn't you leave that first night? You read the rules. I thought they were just warnings. The collector laughed. No, instructions. You're not a pawn. You're a partner. The floor around us cracked. Below, a pit seethed with shadows. Eyes blinked in the darkness. Long, wet arms reached upward, hungry. You have one final choice, the collector said, stepping aside. One last delivery. Behind it, a new package had appeared, wrapped in skin, pulsing slightly. It had my name on it. What happens if I don't deliver? I asked. The collector grinned wider. Then you become what you feared most, the undelivered. I turned away, heart pounding. There had to be another way. I ran. Through the door, down the stairs. The house screamed around me, walls bulging and cracking. Portraits turned to follow me. Voices whispered in my ears, pleading, mocking, begging me to come back. I slammed into the front door. It didn't budge. I turned, and there was again the clipboard. One address. My name. Signature required. Blood dripped from the line where a pen should be. I pressed my hand to it, sobbing. The clipboard hissed, then vanished. The door opened, and I was outside again. But the world had changed. The mountain town was gone, or maybe just emptied. Buildings sat abandoned, windows shattered, roads cracked and overgrown. Fog clung to the air like cobwebs, and above, the sky roiled with veins of sickly green light. I climbed into the van. The keys were gone. Didn't matter. The engine started anyway. The GPS blinked once, then showed an address I'd never seen before. Delivery zone, the beginning. The van drove me into the woods. No roads now, just roots and fog. Then it stopped. A clearing opened up around me. A massive stone arch stood ahead, covered in carvings that moved when I blinked. Beyond it, darkness. Not night. Something deeper. The void between realities. And, standing beside the arch, was a figure. A woman. The one from the general store. Only now, her eyes glowed red, and her mouth was sewn shut. She held something out to me. The last package. I stepped forward, hands shaking. Inside the box was my voice. I could feel it. Everything I'd never said. Every scream I'd swallowed. Every rule I'd followed in silence. I looked at her. What happens if I drop this? She didn't answer. She couldn't. But the wind carried the truth into my ears. You returned to the beginning, but not as you were. I took the package, walked through the arch. The world blinked. Everything went white. Then, I woke up in the van. Sunlight filtered through the trees. The The town was normal, or seemed to be. The clipboard lay on the seat beside me. Blank. No addresses. No rules. Just 2 words. You're free. I stepped outside. Everything felt lighter. Birds chirped. People walked down the street. But no one looked at me. No one saw me. I stepped into the general store. The woman was there. Static on the radio. I tried to speak. She didn't respond. Then I saw it. My reflection in the cracked mirror behind the counter. I had no face. I wasn't me anymore. Not quite. I was something between. A memory. A warning. A ghost in a uniform. And outside, the van sat quietly. Waiting. The clipboard appeared again that night. One address. No name. Just a simple label. New hire. Because someone always takes over. And someone always delivers. Even if the rules keep changing. Even if the roads disappear. Even if the last stop is yourself. So if you ever get a job in a strange town, and the rules don't make sense, follow them. Every time. Or you'll end up like me. The final delivery. End of story.